you're clearly aware of this community, the red pill, et cetera, et cetera. You've been on Fresh and Fit. You make regular appearances on the whatever podcast. How did you find your way to this corner of the internet? Because it really seems like, and I know you've probably been doing this for a while, but it really seems and looks like this is like overnight, all of a sudden you've become like a superstar in this space. So just kind of take me back to where you got started. Who said what said who.
Yeah, so well, I got started with online debates during the COVID lockdowns.
Okay.
So I was basically work furloughed for I don't know, like 16 or 18 weeks.
Okay.
And I hate progressives more than essentially anything on planet Earth. I hate them more than mosquitoes. I hate them more than there's just nothing on this planet which I loathe more than a progressive. So I was obviously upset a bit
Sure.
by the fact that they had shut down the entire economic sector in which I worked. And so I began finding kind of ruthlessly online hunting progressives down to debate and kind of go after, and ended up doing some debates on a really tiny little Facebook group show. And then from there, those debates became so popular that little tiny Facebook group decided to have a YouTube channel in which I was a primary appearer in those debates. So I was fairly popular in the debate space already before I ever entered into any of the manosphere. But I had been debating with manosphere pickup artists, degenerates of all kind. As you know, there's two kind of divergences from the manosphere.
Yes.
The left fears them because of what they consider to be the alt-right pipeline, which organizations like Progressive Victory have talked about this in depth. For those of you who don't know, Progressive Victory funded and bought out all of Twitch politics. They began to pay creators to run propaganda on their behalf. Now, if you listen to the mission statement from the organizer of Progressive Victory, he explains that Red Pill Manosphere content creation is an alt-right pipeline. And because it's an alt-right pipeline, he instructed these leftists to specifically attack the manosphere. And they do. That's what they do all the time. That's one of the primary things they do. However, there's a distinction where there's another side of the manosphere which is elevated, and this is through pickup artists and the degenerate side, which I would say is actually a larger side of the manosphere grift than what you would consider to be the true red pill side.
Okay.
So those guys get elevated, okay, and their messaging is pure and sheer degeneracy and scumbaggery, and it's all about humping as many women as possible and essentially the destruction of the family unit. So I had been already tangling with these idiots for a good year and decimating them. Now, I did some debates with guys who are a lot more akin to my ideology. So, for instance, I don't agree with everything Myron says, and I'm happy to take his ideology on the parts of it that I disagree with. Same thing with Brian Atlas and guys like this. The idea here is that I think I'm right, and I think my ideology is the correct one, and so I'm willing to defend it kind of tooth and nail against people who are challengers to it, specifically the degenerate element. So how I found myself in the I guess quote unquote manosphere is because I'm just as likely to eviscerate and wreck one of the degenerate manosphere scumbags as I am one of the progressive left-wing scumbags, just as likely.
Okay, very good. Now, what in your opinion, what do you think? Because you talked about the manosphere being, having two divergence. There's I guess the scumbag side, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, I can associate that better if you want.
Okay, yeah, that makes well. What do you think is what is the difference in your opinion between the good side and the bad side of the manosphere?
Can I ask you a question?
Because obviously we get a lot. Yeah, sure.
Are you on a laptop right now?
I actually am on my iPad. I had to I had to hucklebuck this thing together because I totally forgot everything at home. I'm actually on the road in Vegas right now.
Okay, gotcha. Because the audio is a little bit. Audio's a little low.
Normal setup.
Okay, No problem, no problem. But can you go ahead and repeat the question for me?
Yeah, sure. What do you think is the difference between, I guess, the good side and the bad side of the manosphere?
It's the value. It's the prescriptive element.
Okay.
So the manosphere, the red pill itself is I liken it to a data packet. So it's a ton of descriptive claims. The claim can be as basic as women like men who are taller than them, all the way up to descriptive like dark triad traits or
Right.
other descriptive things which go into this data packet. Now, not all of them are true.
Sure.
And Evo Psych would go into this kind of data packet as well. Now, there's enough true claims which are in the red pill data packet that you can do a lot of damage with it, or you can do a lot of good with it, right?
Right.
But it's all descriptive, none of it's prescriptive. The problem is that a lot of people pick up this data packet and decide that they're going to use it for necessary societal evil. They use it to do things like promote OF, promote degeneracy,
Right.
promote promiscuity, promote all sorts of things which are antithetical to Christian ethics. And so, again, those people I consider to be bad actors, and their ideology needs to be destroyed just as bad as progressive leftist ideology needs to be destroyed.
Okay. Wow. So that is a very distinct difference there. We've already got super chats coming in. Dr. B84 with the $50 super chat says W collab. Moist Fista with the $5 super chat says salute to the both of you, banger of a collab. So the first question I'm going to ask from my Discord is actually a pretty thought-provoking one. It's from Great Sphincter, interesting name. It says Leviticus 21:14 says, quote, he must not marry a widow, a divorced woman, or a woman defiled by, but only a virgin from his own people. His question is, how do we honor this in the current year with the existence of the aforementioned OnlyFans and women being encouraged to be promiscuous? And please pardon me, because like I told you off the air, this is the first time I've been nervous on a podcast in a while, so please forgive me. He says OnlyFans is no two ways about it. I guess this applies to passport bros as well, who are marrying people from completely different cultures. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Levitical law has nothing to do with Christian ethics. That was a foundational law which was designed specifically for the people, a Jewish people group of the time.
Okay.
So this is not, Christians don't follow Levitical law, and we never have followed Levitical law.
Okay.
So we don't do animal sacrifices. We don't do those kinds of offerings. We wear mixed cloth garments and all sorts of different things. So we don't actually follow Levitical law. So that's one.
Okay.
Two, within the confines of Christian ethics, the prescriptors for these things are going to somewhat be dependent upon culture. Should you attempt, I think, to marry someone who's a virgin and keep yourself chaste? Yes, yes, you should. However, it's not a requirement in Christian ethics that you do so. It's not a requirement, in other words, that if you get married to somebody who's not a virgin, that somehow this is a sinful union or something like this. The whole point of Christianity is redemption and salvation through Jesus Christ. So many people find salvation after doing various bad things in their life,
right,
and they're able to reconcile those bad things and go on to live very, very good lives, in the faith. So this is allowable. It's just not preferable. It's not societally preferable. So as much of this behavior as we can try to run out of it, the better society ultimately will be, the closer you get to following the law of Jesus Christ and Christian ethics.
Yeah, and just to get personal here, I'm no longer the most religious person in the world. I don't think I'm agnostic. I don't think I'm an atheist, because I believe that, at some point up the, I guess, chain of creation, there has to be an uncaused cause. And that uncaused cause is, what we call a deity. Talk to my audience, and really me, talk to my audience about guys like me who have sort of lost their faith in Christianity, because I've wanted more than anything to feel the way I used to feel about the Holy Spirit and God and the Bible, and it's almost like I've lost my way. So what would you tell to a guy like me who maybe happens to walk into your church and says, hey man, like, I've been down that road, I've been Catholic, I've been Baptist, and I kind of don't know where to go here.
You were a Catholic?
Yeah, I was.
You were raised in the Catholic Church, baptized?
No, I was raised in the Baptist church, baptized in the Baptist church. Then I decided to become Catholic, and then was baptized in the Catholic church.
Okay,
So that explains a lot.
and then you just left it all together.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasons why I left the Catholic Church altogether, and I guess I should follow my own advice here. You have to really separate the art from the artist. Like, we all know that Michael Jackson was more than likely a file, but he's still one of the greatest performers ever, in my opinion. So I can separate that. But one of my main reasons was the stuff going on, with priests and their altar boys, if you know what I'm getting at. And like many people, it really put a sour taste in my mouth, in terms of just the whole idea of following God and this and that and the third. And so, like I said, I've been looking for something to sort of reignite my religious, my desire to be a part of a religious organization.
Why do you think? Why do you think in public schools that the amount of children who are is
Mhm.
significantly higher than the amount of children who get in a church?
No, why?
Do you know why?
No, I don't
It's
actually.
because
No.
predators go where the kids are. And so the thing is that it doesn't really matter what the venue is or the avenue is. You're going to find a large amount of predators who work in group homes. You're going to find
Okay.
a large amount of predators who work in schools. You're going to find a large amount of predators who are inside of various churches. The thing is that's interesting here is that inside the public works sector, in anything in regards to children, the predatory nature of the workers is significantly higher than they are inside of these religious groups. The
Right.
reason is actually because the religious groups do more to try to govern them out and pay more attention to that than the public sector secular groups do. So the Catholic Church got a pretty bad rap, right? But the Catholic Church is this
Yeah.
global organization. It's massive. It's huge. It's a giant, massive machine with billions of people who are involved in it, with a large amount of clergy. So there's going to be some of that's happening, right? And there's even going to be some sects of it who enter into cover-ups, but it'll never be as bad as what you find in the private sector ever.
Okay.
So when people kind of lean away from church life and say, but it's because of the awful things which happen inside of this church or in this church, I just like to point out that the rates of this are significantly lower than you would find in other areas where children are present.
Makes
So
sense.
I think it's actually a really bad idea to lean away from the organization which does more to try to curtail that
Sure.
than you would find in secular organizations, right? So,
Yeah.
so the idea here being this behavior I don't like, and I want to see it curtailed. Well, why would you then move away from a group that tries to curtail it when the other group that you move to does less to curtail it? You see
Sure.
what I'm saying?
No, that makes perfect sense. It's almost like my wife and I, we watched the show on Netflix. It's called The Lincoln Lawyer. Very, very good show. I would highly recommend it. And I remember one of the characters was talking to the guy who's the Lincoln Lawyer. He says, the worst kind of criminal is a criminal with a badge. And so me losing faith in law enforcement, it's almost like the reason why I lost faith in the Catholic Church is the same reason I would lose faith in law enforcement. Well, there are so many dirty cops. Well, just like you said, dirty cops they're not really cops. They're just criminals with a badge. And I think the comparison that you made is that if it was going to happen anywhere, just like you said, they go where the kids are. Criminals go where the crime is.
Yeah.
Predators go where the kids are. And if
Well, like
kids happen to be-
one guy just said, in fact, he said, well, yeah, but that's because there's more kids in public school. No, we're talking about per capita. Per
Okay.
capita, there's less of this. In fact, I have some studies that reach as high as 50 times higher inside of public school systems
Wow.
and public institutions. So, like, let me give you some other examples of this.
Okay.
If you are an abusive parent, if you come from an abusive home, your father and your mother are physically abusive to you, your chances of actually being outside in a group home after you were removed from your abusive parents
Mhm.
are actually higher than if they left you with your abusive parents.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
This is the conundrum which we find ourselves in, where the state itself is not very apt because they use psychological methodology instead of intuitive parenting, and they don't have the pair bond with the children that parents do.
Okay.
You end up with this same kind of issue. all over the place in any public institution. That's the case.
Wow. Good Lord, man. Now I understand why you've got, you ever heard of Super Hot Fire?
No.
He's a quote unquote battle rapper. His record is like 386,000 and L. Ghost 1978 wants to know. He says, ask Andrew why he chose Orthodox.
Well, so I found religion through logic before I found faith. So the thing is there's many different ways that people come to the path. The path is very narrow, but as you're instructed by Jesus Christ, knock and the door will be open to you. So what he's saying is, if you go looking for answers, you're going to find them, and you're never going to have to look very far, right? Okay. You're never going to have to look very far to find them, because the truth's written on your heart anyway. So the thing is for me, what you just gave, that's called the first mover argument, the uncaused cause, right? The unmoved mover. Right. That's referred to as the first mover argument, but it has some problems, because a secularist can say, okay, well, whatever this timeless being is, I think it's a spaghetti monster. Why would that make it the Christian God, right? Right. So there's some issues with the first mover argument, but there's far less issues with combination arguments. So you get to that with inductive reasoning, but then we can use logic to look at the impossibility to the contrary. The impossibility to the contrary, meaning if we take into account the transcendentals which exist, the laws of logic, and the metaphysical truths which you can't escape, laws of logic come in three. The three laws of logic is you have the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction. Okay. These are metaphysical truths that don't exist anywhere except in the mind, and yet they actually have to be real. There's no way around them. We can't even have discourse without them. We can't even function without them. So this implies that there's a mind, and if it implies there's a mind, and we already know that there has to be a cause, we've inductively figured out that there has to be a cause, and now we have a mind that has to go with the cause. So then we can look at some other metaphysical truths, like, would this cause have to be infinite? Well, it would. It would have to be timeless. It would have to be all-powerful, because it was uncreated and created itself. So all logical roads, even from the Platonic forms, and the idea of Socrates and Plato, which led to these Platonic forms. Orthodoxy, you could even say, has a lot of Platonic influence in it. And though we're not Platonists by any means, but you can come to this logically first, and then after you come to it logically, faith tends to come with it.
How does one get experience dealing with women and find a marriageable woman without becoming a degenerate? That's actually a very good question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat it for me? You're just a little quiet, dude. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. And that is not a complaint that I have ever gotten. I am as loud as they come. He wants to know. He says, how does one get experience dealing with women and finding a marriageable woman without becoming a degenerate?
Yeah, that's actually the answer is in the question. Like, why is there a requirement that you have to women that you go on dates with? Why is that? Like, why is it a requirement that you need to sleep with them? Why is it a requirement you need to have sex with them? Why is it even a requirement you need to make out with them on the couch? Why do you think that it's impossible for men to have experience with women and understand female nature and things like this absent intercourse? That's the least compelling part of a relationship with a woman. It's literally the least compelling, most base part of this interpersonal dynamic. So is a weapon that is used by women, not by men. You understanding their nature is not a requirement that you stick your in their. There's no such requirement that exists. And by the way, there's tons of virgins who are out there, virgin men, who understand inner dynamics just fine. These are logical assessments and experience-based and intuitive assessments that in no way, shape, or form require you to wet your willy. Like, why do you have to do that?
No, I mean, I hadn't even thought of it from that perspective. You could experience you really could get a lot of experience with women without having sex with them and still understand female nature. That had until just, and I don't know, maybe until now it had never occurred to me that's how did you describe it? You said this is the least what part of the
that's the least important and most base part of the relationship, meaning not based, but base, like it's rudimentary.
Sure,
right.
Sure.
The idea is this, that you could walk over to a complete stranger, female who's a complete stranger to you, pull down your pants and have sex with her, and she can have sex with you, right?
Right.
This requires no knowledge of interpersonal dynamics at all, right? It's just
That's
totally
true.
rude. It's
Very true.
totally rudimentary, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is like, I don't really understand what it has to do with intersexual dynamic. No idea what it has to do with that. What it is I think people cope, right? They want these women.
Yeah.
And so they make these claims. They say, well, how can I really understand how women operate? If it's like, you can understand it fine. Your logic,
Sure.
your reason, your intuition, and your inductive reasoning don't go away because you can't control your heart on.
You know, it's interesting. Now, one would argue, well, the reason why we have to have sex with these women is because it is intersexual dynamics. And at this point, I would argue that the root word, I don't think it's talking about the actual intercourse. I think it's talking about the two. So when it says intersexual dynamics, it's talking about the two, male and female. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that too often what people do is they reduce everything to intercourse.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's really funny about it is like when you're married and you basically have intercourse at your will, your beck and your call, right?
Right.
You find out that it's the least important kind of metric when it comes to the assessment in your marriage, unless it's absent. Then it becomes very important. But if it's there, right, every other problem becomes paramount, and you realize that things like loyalty and this type of thing are going to take precedent over everything else. So I think ultimately you have a big problem with the idea that you cannot gain experience with women without having sex with them. It just seems absurd to me.